Hey y'all, I'm Elisa, the Scrappy Wife behind ScrappyWife.com, and today I have a faith journal process video for you. I'm working in my Archer and Olive journal that I'm going to use as my faith journal, my Bible journal this year. And today I'm going to be documenting some sermon notes from a recent sermon series and some strategies for being less defensive, which is something that the Bible actually calls us to do. So we'll get into that. I'm super excited to work through this process. I will link things that I end up using down below. Otherwise, I'm going to put you guys on fast forward. Let's go. This is actually going to end up being a page I come back to because what I'm going to notate here are the 8 strategies that our pastor is going over on how to be less defensive in our lives. And I think it's just such a great sermon series because I know that I can become really defensive, and I know that that is not how Jesus designed us. I know Jesus designed us to connect and to be listeners and to not just automatically write off people that disagree with us. And I tend to do that. I tend to jump up in anger and respond when I feel attacked. And I think oftentimes A, I'm not necessarily being attacked, and B, it's just an overreaction. And so I'm going to use this strategy page. I think it's going to come in really handy, but he's revealing a different strategy each week. So this is a page I'm going to come back to. And I'm starting out, the plan is to do kind of this mixed media feel. So this is going to be the wheel that's going to have the sermon title series in it. And then it's going to branch off into different sections that will be able to then explain the different strategies. And so I wanted the wheel. I didn't want it to be in the center. I just like things to be a little bit off center. And I'm going to be using several pieces from the Vicki Boutin color study line. If you've been around my channel very long, then you know that I am obsessed with this scrapbooking line. I feel like if I only was able to use one paper line for the rest of my life, this one would be it. I love, love, love this particular line from Vicki Boutin. I think it's awesome. I have purchased the ephemera twice now just because I am using it and loving it. So I'm using all these different frames and tags, and that's going to be where I put the 8 different strategies. So I have 8 different frames picked out. I'm going to start putting these down. I'll speed this up. I move them ever so slightly as I'm putting them down. I'll have some kind of coming off the page just because I think that adds an interesting layer when you have pieces kind of hanging off the page. This one I'm just cutting because I want the frame to appear that it's in front of the postcard. And some of them I'm having to trim down just to make them work for my page. And don't be afraid to cut apart your ephemera, to change them up just to make it work for what you're doing. So I have all of these colors that are being brought in with this color study line. And once I trim off these extra pieces, then I'm going to take the colors to another level. Using my pencil, I'm going to extend out these lines really lightly to see how this kind of diagram, this pie chart, if you will, this wheel would continue. And then what I'm going to do is get some Distress Oxide inks, kind of in rainbow order, kind of just in the order that I can make it work on the page, and a stencil. I'm going to use a dot stencil. This is just full of all these little circles that I've had in my stash. I'm not sure where it's from, and I'm going to use it just to add some color to the background. I want it to have kind of a comic book feel. That's what I was going for with the dots. It got a little tricky because I had already put the frames and such down on the page. Some of the frames were empty, so I think it would have been tricky no matter what. But basically I'm going to go from color to color. I'm using the different Distress Oxide inks, and I'm filling in all the little spaces. I'm using the domed blender brushes from scrapbook.com, and surprisingly these actually let me do a pretty decent job of getting just in certain little spots. I know that there are some teeny blender brushes that are available that you can get on scrapbook.com or Amazon that would have been been a really good fit for this particular project as well. Just getting in those little detail places with your blending brush can be a little bit tricky. In between each one, I of course am changing my blending brush, and I'm also wiping down my stencil just so that I don't drag the wrong color ink into a new section of the journal page. All right, I'm going to speed this up a little bit for you guys as I come around. I am not really worried about how perfect the stenciling looks because I'm planning on using some more Distress Oxide products in the background that will kind of change the feel of the dots ever so slightly. You're still going to get this pattern, but it's going to be very loose feeling, which I really like. I want it to be a messy feel, and I think it's going to be a really great page for keeping these strategies in these notes. Having it be in color, just again, that's something I know myself. I know I'm going to be drawn to it, and since I know for me this is a lesson that I need to hear and read over and over again, then why not do it in some bright colors that really excite me. So getting all of the little crevices filled in, 2 more colors left, going to a light blue. I think the next one is Tumbled Glass, and then the last one I believe is Sapphire. It's a dark blue. So filling in all of the little spots. Didn't quite get in the edges. The light blue was kind of the hardest, just to make sure it was getting down on the page. And then dark blue filling in. It looked like that one is, yes, Chip Sapphire. So filling all that in, and then I'm going to pull out a product that I haven't used in a while. These are Distress Oxide crayons, and they are a water reactive crayon, and I'm using the different colors to highlight the different sections of this wheel and how it kind of goes outward. And what I'm going to do after I'm putting down the color is come back with a clean paintbrush. So I'm actually going to use a water brush where the water is stored in the paintbrush and you just squeeze and fresh water comes out. It makes it really easy to clean your paintbrush in between different colors, and it's actually a really good tool for on the go, but it's going to work really well in this case. After I get all the colors down, I'm going to come and add water over the top that will kind of react the different colors, and what it will do is allow it to kind of fade out, create some shading, create some blurring of the different dots that I have going on. You can see it almost makes it act like watercolor, and I'm bringing in the different colors, letting it shade around the circle, and you can see how the shading is kind of starting to come across. And I will be able to write over the top of this once it is dry, which is great because I have a lot of notes to keep on this page, and the wheel is going to be part of those notes. But see how the rainbow is kind of coming out now, and having the colors in the wheel are actually bringing out the colors that are in the dots, the polka dots in the background. So I like how it's all kind of pulling together, and I still have my main places for journaling ready to go. So all of that blended in, and then I take it down or out to the lines, and I'm blending out from the lines, and I used Distress Oxide ink in the stenciling, which means it is also water reactive. So as I put water over the top of some of the lines, then you're going to see the dots start to react as well. See, as I pull on the orange, it's going to start smearing some of those, which is what I was going for. I want them to be a little bit blurred. That was the whole idea of this kind of messy mixed media background feel. And I'm going to keep going over and over places until I'm just feeling really good about what it looks like. Sometimes with Distress Oxide crayons, I can have a little trouble making sure all of the little wax bits are actually blended out, like they are reacted. That's one of the downsides of this particular product, which is probably why I don't use it all of the time. But because the colors were going to match so well with the inks that I was using, and I was going to be able to get the impression that I wanted, then I just took the time to go over and make sure that I was really making sure all of those little bits and pieces were reacting with the water. I want to make sure it's super dry before I try to write on it, or else I will end up messing up some of my markers. So you can see I'm going over as I'm drying. I'm actually seeing some spots that needed to be a little bit more reacted. All right, so as you can see, I'm taking my attention to the middle. This is the title of the sermon series, which is None Taken. And it's in reference to when people say no offense, and you can respond none taken. And it's about the freedom that we find when we live in Christ and we realize that we don't have to take offense at all of the things that tend to offend us in this world. And I am very guilty of this, of jumping to a defensive state when it is just not necessary. Up here, I'm going to add my little subtitle, which is no offense, just so I will remember what the none taken is coming from. Because I think if I didn't write that, looking back on this, I might forget what it was in reference to. So have that right there. And now I'm going to start labeling the strategies. Like I said, this is supposed to be an 8-week sermon series. I just listened to week 2, or I just went and heard week 2. And so I'm going to go ahead and label all of the 8 strategies around the circle, and then I'll start filling them in as we go. As I come home from church on Sundays and reflect on the sermon, I can fill in my notes from that week. I have a ton of notes from each sermon, but I'll just fill in some of the highlights. These are numbers from Felicity Jane. I thought they'd be great for labeling the different areas so I know exactly which number is supposed to go with which box. That way I can, harken back to the strategy that I was referencing because the strategies will all be listed in the circle. Once I get those in place, parts of the spread were starting to feel a little bit empty to me. I love having very full, very colorful journaling spreads, Bible journaling spreads, faith journaling spreads, any of them. I am all about all the colors. So I went back to that Vicki Boutin ephemera collection from Color Study, and I pulled out a few pieces that kind of fit in my rainbow theme, and you'll see that I'll kind of organize them around the page, filling in a few little spots that I just thought could use a little something extra. I ended up changing out those large flowers just because they don't really make sense. They were a little bit too big, but I did have smaller flowers that I could work with. And you can see I just kind of place things around the page, move them until I feel good about the kind of cluster of where all these flowers are going to be and where all the ephemera pieces are going to be. And then I just start using my Tombow adhesive to go ahead and attach them to the page. This is definitely one of those times where some of the illustrating that I'm doing in this faith journal does not necessarily pertain directly to the sermon, but it is illustrations and art that makes me happy and excited, and it does reflect time spent back in the Word, spent back reflecting over sermon notes and looking at the big takeaways, which I think is an important thing to do during the week after you've listened to or after you've been to church, to really take some time to reflect on the message. The last thing I will do is fill in the notes and the strategies for strategy number 1 and number 2, and then my page is all ready to go to be filled in with even more strategies as we dive deeper. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider hitting that subscribe button as well as the bell notification button. I will link all of the supplies that I used down below, so you can check out those links if you are interested. A heads up, those are affiliate links. It doesn't cost you anymore, but it does go a long way towards supporting this channel. And I want to give a huge shout out to my patrons. Thank you so much for all of your support. If you head over to my Patreon page, there's a link in the description. You can see some of the perks that you receive as a monthly patron, and I think you would really enjoy it. All right, I hope that you have a fabulous day, and as always, keep it creative.